So I just finished my embroidery, and I wanted to show you a trick that will allow you to even rehoop embroidery, but is based on the alignment lines that you need for endless embroidery. So what I have in the machine at the moment that is just finished is a motif which is endless embroidery. And what I'm going to do is show you all the things that you need to do, and you should try and do for every project, if you have a machine which doesn't have one of the great big screens and allows you to really align the project more easily. So, 1 second. So the first thing I need to do is take this design out of the hoop, so it's free. Okay, and then I move just the hoop out of the way. So what you're left with is the design that needs to be aligned. So you can see this is already 2 panels, and I have the alignment lines which finish the stitches there, and what I have is the end of this tool, the net, and a piece that's too short of dissolvable stabilizer. So we need to do some trimmings to put things right. So the first thing is, make sure you don't cut your final fabric, and trim this really close to the security stitching. Perfect. Okay, now what we'll do, thank you for getting involved, Tiago. It always amazes me that pets love getting involved. So I've got here some Aqua Magic by Inspira, and I'm just going to put a piece that's big enough for the hoop. Okay, this part is easy, so loosen that a bit, line up the hoop. This part is normal, just hoop, make sure there's fabric around the edges so it hoops securely. Hey, I don't want your wet nose on the dissolvable fabric. Okay, so tighten it up so it's good and secure. Okay, tighten it up a bit more. Tighten it up a bit more, just so it's not going to pull, and then finish. You could use 2 layers if you really want to, but there's no particular need. This waterproof stabilizer is water dissolvable stabilizer is very good. Okay, so that's hooped and really ready to go in the machine. So let's go over to the machine and see what happens now. You're gonna have to get off of there, Tiago. I need that. Good boy. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put the hoop in. It's normal, you see it's just the hoop like that. And what we'll do is we'll leaving that up. So let's zoom in on the keypad to see what we're doing here. Okay, perfect. Alright, so what I'm doing is I am going to press, so I've got it set to color 1, I've got the right hoop set. This particular one needs to have a lower speed because I'm using bobbin thread in a size 9 standard needle because I'm doing fine lace work. So if it's too high, it just jams. So by pressing, so that we've got a whole bunch of buttons here. You press this to select your pattern. Your 1 is it's always on the SD card. But here we've got the arrows which allow you to adjust the hoop position to the needle, but these ones up here, stitch back, stitch ahead, thread back, thread ahead. So what we want to do is just press the +1 to bring it to the first stitch. Okay. And that brings the needle to exactly where it needs to start sewing. Okay. So I will move this over slightly and zoom back a bit so you can see what I'm doing here. So I already have the end marking, which will tell me what to line up. And all I'm going to do is just pull this under here so that it's flat and not tangled on anything, and then pull it to where the continuation markings on. Now it gets very precise, and I'm going to get very close here. So the needle, when I turn this, is going to tell me exactly where it drops into the fabric. What I can see from my previous mark is the starting point. And if I put my needle in exactly that place and then complete the stitch manually, then press the next stitch, and I always adjust my joining lines to have a cross, to go across as well as up, because it just makes it easier to line up. I'm going to press that back, and what I can do is see if that still, and you can lift the foot without any problem, make sure it goes in exactly the same hole. It does. Complete the stitch, press the next one, and make sure that goes in exactly the same hole. Okay, this is a bit of a slow process, but I found it's worth it. Take to the next stitch, make sure it goes in the same hole. So by doing the cross, what happens is it lines up in the first hole 3 times, and because it's stitching there, it actually holds it very well. So now we're going to start going up. And what I want to do is make sure that the stitches line up exactly on the same stitching line I had before. And there aren't that many stitches, so this is worth the patience. Because the most important hole comes at the top. Because what you want to do is make sure that the final stitch is exactly in the top hole, because those holes have to match up. So at this point, because it's not tacked down anywhere, these are the first stitches holding this onto the stabilizer on the bottom. So you could, if you feel really confident, set the machine to stitch really slowly and just make sure it doesn't go off. But if it goes off, then you're going to go back and forth, and you might hoop your fabric slightly crooked. I find this, however, works very well. I'm almost finished. This is where the mature eyesight problem is of course a pain. Now if I felt like changing threads, it would be a lot easier because I could have put black thread in something instead of white on white, which would make it a little easier to see. However, because I didn't want big black, this works just fine. I can see it up close. Okay, we're coming right to the end now. Still on. Okay, I think maybe one more. No. Okay, so that should be the final. Final line. Oops. Should be right there. Okay. So if I hold that, now what I'm going to do is press start. Oops. As long as it's in exactly the right hole, we're okay. So what I'm going to do is back up. I've got lots of horrible threads here now, so we'll just trim those, they don't matter. So as you see, this part takes long, but it's so important because it's the only way at this point you're going to be sure that's the top hole. So the most important is to make sure that top hole is absolutely exactly where it should be. Okay. Okay, now it's secured in place. So the next part, which is weird, I will show you. So had I added the fixing stitches into the original pattern, it would be perfect. It would be fine to just continue on. But in this case, I'm going to use the machine to do the fixing, to tack this down now. So unfortunately, you can't just hit the fix button and go. You know, what you have to do is start the pattern again, but it's not really a problem. So you just press start, press fix, okay? And the first thing it's going to do is fix it. So what you have to do is make sure that you're just dragging your fingers, not pushing, but dragging your fingers to keep the fabric smooth while it does the locking stitches, the fixing stitches. And by pulling gently this way, what it will do is it'll make sure that it's good and taut. It's gently, really gently. You're not stretching, or just it makes sure that it forces this to be tight. Okay. Okay. So what is going to happen now is that the machine is going to want to do those same alignment stitches, but I don't need to do that, so I can just click the press to skip directly to the pattern, and I can remove the threads here. Okay, and press go. press stop there. So, how can you use this if you have to rehoop? Well, you just put down a base exactly the same, and then because you've got the alignment markings from the start of your pattern, you just realign the alignment markings, make sure it's straight, and you should be able to then use the thread and stitch mover to cycle back through to where it got where you had to stop stitching. So one thing I can say is that if you have any really long thread runs on this, I would split them into different colors, because it makes it a lot easier to line up if you don't have to hold that button 5,000 stitches, because you could be there literally half an hour doing that. So it's much easier to split it into smaller runs, and I'm going to show you a bit of that in a moment. So I'm going to press go and let that get on with it, and then I'm going to show you the other part. So here I am in Buzz Edit, and I wanted to show you what I'm actually stitching out at the moment. So you can see I have I'm literally stitching this all in white, but as you can see, I've broken it into lots of different colors. That's by choice, and just press the stop button on my machine to remove it so it stitches the whole thing out without a break. Very simple, very easy. So that's how I've done that. But what's important is these two lines at the beginning and the end. So those are the alignment lines, and I'm going to remove them. So by going to the very beginning, hitting the home button, if I click the plus to zoom in, here's the alignment line. I can delete it. And if I click minus and go to the end, and click plus, it zooms in, I can then delete those. Okay, so this is how you would normally start with your pattern. You've got your embroidery here, and what you want to do is click on here, Buzz Tools, and what we want to do is create continuous borders. So this automatically creates, and we're going to go down. But what we need to do is make sure these patterns line up. So it would be nice if this was a little bigger, but I don't. However, you can see that they're lined up now, and it's automatically going to put alignment lines right at the very beginning and the end of the pattern. So let's click OK, and I'll show you what I mean about the next part. So all it does is it puts a lovely single line. Now what I found in my experience is that the phone rang there. So what I'm going to do is zoom in here where I like to make my little adjustment. If I click on that stitch there, and I click the add stitch, it allows me to do that. Okay. And why do I do that? Well, I'm going to straighten this out now, of course. This allows it to be more secure when it first starts, and it makes sure that that stitch goes through the hole 3 times, which makes it a lot better. So it starts there, it goes to the hole. It just works better. Okay, you see how that goes to the hole multiple times. So that secures it. Otherwise what I found is sometimes that initial stitch pulled out. And then you can just save it. That's perfect now. And what it means is when you go to stitch this out, that's your starting point. It goes through there once, then there, then twice, then there, then 3 times. And that makes it nice and easy to make sure that's lined up.